The metal doors of the transport ship opened with a soft hiss, and Jake Morrison stepped onto the docking platform of Celestial Haven. The massive research station floated in the darkness of space like a glowing jewel. Hundreds of different alien species worked here to study the galaxy and all the life forms in it. Jake had never seen anything like it before. He carried a simple bag over his shoulder and wore the standard blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. His brown hair was cut short and neat. At 32 years old, he had spent most of his career dealing with alien cultures, but this was his first time being the one getting studied. Dr. Melody Ashworth waited for him at the end of the platform. She was an elf from the world of Silvaris and stood almost 7 feet tall. Her skin was pale like moonlight, and her silver hair fell past her shoulders in perfect waves. She wore a white lab coat over elegant robes that seemed to shimmer when she moved. Her pointed ears twitched slightly as she watched Jake approach. "Welcome to Celestial Haven, Ambassador Morrison," she said in a voice that sounded like music. "I am Dr. Ashworth, and I will be overseeing your species evaluation tests." Jake smiled and extended his hand for a handshake. "Just call me Jake. Thanks for having me here." Dr. Ashworth looked at his offered hand with confusion for a moment before carefully taking it. Her grip was light and delicate, like she was afraid she might break something. Jake shook her hand gently and noticed how she seemed surprised by his firm grip. "Please follow me," she said, and turned to walk down a long corridor. "I must warn you that the tests can be quite demanding. Most species find them very challenging." The hallway was filled with beings Jake had only seen in pictures before. A group of blue-skinned aquatic aliens swam through tubes filled with water that ran along the walls. Tall insectoid creatures clicked and chirped as they worked at computer terminals. Beings made of pure energy floated past them, glowing with soft light. They entered a large laboratory filled with strange machines and devices. Several alien women looked up from their work as Jake and Dr. Ashworth walked in. A blue-skinned woman with gills along her neck approached them first. "This is Dr. Katie Flores," Dr. Ashworth said. "She designs and operates most of our testing equipment." Dr. Flores had large, dark eyes and wore a special suit that kept her skin moist. She looked Jake up and down with obvious curiosity. "So this is a human?" she said in a voice that bubbled slightly. "He looks so fragile." A tall, insectoid alien with 4 arms and compound eyes joined them. "I am Dr. Amy Chen," she said with clicking sounds between words. "I study species data and biology. Your species has very interesting records. The last alien to approach had skin that seemed to be made of crystal and gave off a soft blue glow. She wore what looked like a military uniform. "Commander Lily Vance," she said in a sharp voice. "I oversee station security and species classification." Jake nodded to each of them politely. "Nice to meet you all. I have to say this place is amazing. Nothing like this exists on Earth." Dr. Ashworth gestured toward a large metal chamber in the center of the lab. "That is our gravity testing facility. It can simulate gravitational forces up to 20 times, what most species consider normal. We start all our evaluations there." "Why gravity?" Jake asked. "Gravitational tolerance tells us much about a species' physical capabilities," Dr. Chen explained. "How well you handle increased gravity shows us your strength, endurance, and basic biological limits." Commander Vance stepped forward with her arms crossed. "Most species begin to struggle at 2 times their home gravity. Very few can function beyond 3 times normal gravity. We expect you will tap out somewhere in that range." Dr. Flores was already working at a control panel next to the chamber. "The chamber will gradually increase the gravitational force," she said. "When you can no longer continue safely, just call out, and we will stop the test immediately." Jake looked at the chamber with interest rather than fear. "How high can it go?" he asked. "The maximum is 20 times standard gravity," Dr. Ashworth replied, "but no biological being has ever survived anywhere near that level. 10 times gravity is usually fatal for most species." "Interesting," Jake said, and started walking toward the chamber. "Should I take off my jacket or anything?" The alien women exchanged glances. Dr. Chen made notes on her electronic tablet while Dr. Flores checked her equipment readings twice. Commander Vance watched Jake with narrow eyes, like she expected him to show fear at any moment. "You may keep your clothing on," Dr. Ashworth said. "The chamber will feel normal at first, but as gravity increases, you will feel heavier and heavier. Your movement will become more difficult, and eventually you will be unable to stand or move at all. Jake nodded and stepped into the chamber. The walls were smooth metal and the floor had a soft padding. A clear barrier slid down to separate him from the observers. He could hear their voices through speakers in the walls. "Beginning tests now," Dr. Flores announced. "Starting at 1.5 times standard gravity." Jake felt a slight increase, in weight like he was carrying a heavy backpack. He bounced slightly on his feet and did a few arm stretches. Through the clear wall, he could see the alien women watching him closely. "Increasing to 2 times gravity," Dr. Flores said. Now Jake felt noticeably heavier, but still completely comfortable. He started doing jumping jacks just to test his movement. The observers looked surprised by his easy movements. "Subject appears unaffected," Dr. Chen reported, "increasing to 2.5 times gravity." Jake continued his jumping jacks without any sign of strain. If anything, he seemed to be enjoying himself. He gave the researchers a thumbs up and smiled. Dr. Ashworth checked her instruments with a puzzled expression. "Are you certain the equipment is functioning correctly?" she asked Dr. Flores. "All systems show normal operation," Dr. Flores replied. "The human should be feeling significant strain by now." Commander Vance leaned forward to speak into the microphone. "Human, how do you feel?" "Pretty good," Jake called back cheerfully. "Kind of like I am wearing a weighted vest during training. Is this going to get harder?" The alien women stared at him in growing confusion and amazement. Dr. Flores stared at her control panel in disbelief and ran another diagnostic check on all the equipment. Every reading showed that the gravity chamber was working perfectly. The human inside should be struggling to breathe by now, but instead, he was doing some kind of exercise routine. "Increasing to 3 times standard gravity," she announced with uncertainty in her voice. Jake felt the extra weight settle into his bones and muscles. It reminded him of the weighted training gear his military friends used back on Earth. He dropped down and started doing push-ups to test his strength under the new conditions. The movements felt smooth and controlled. Dr. Ashworth pressed her, face close to the observation window. Her pointed ears were twitching rapidly, which meant she was either very excited or very worried. "This should not be possible," she whispered. "At 3 times gravity, most species can barely stand upright." "Maybe your equipment is broken," Commander Vance suggested, but her voice lacked conviction. She had seen too many species tests to believe in simple equipment failure. Dr. Amy Chen was clicking rapidly as she entered data into her tablet. Her compound eyes reflected the lights of the chamber as she watched Jake continue his push-ups. "I am checking our records on human physiology," she said. "Perhaps we missed something important." Jake finished 20 push-ups and stood up easily. He stretched his arms over his head and rotated his shoulders like he was warming up for a real workout. Through the speakers, he could hear the alien women talking in worried tones. "Hey, can you hear me okay in there?" he called out. "I noticed you all sound a bit stressed. Is everything working right on your end?" Dr. Flores fumbled with her microphone controls. "Yes, human, we can hear you perfectly. How are you feeling at 3 times gravity?" "Honestly, it feels like I am carrying a heavy backpack during a hike," Jake replied. "Not too bad, really. When does this test start getting challenging?" The 4 alien women looked at each other with expressions of growing alarm. Dr. Chen pulled up a holographic display showing data from hundreds of previous species tests. Every single one showed signs of severe stress at 3 times gravity. "Increasing to 4 times standard gravity," Dr. Flores said after a long pause. Jake felt his body get significantly heavier, but his muscles adapted quickly. He had trained in heavy gravity simulators during his diplomatic preparation courses. This felt similar, but not quite as intense as some of those sessions. He started doing lunges across the chamber floor. "The human is performing complex movements at 4 times gravity," Dr. Chen reported in amazement. "Our records show that only 3 species in galactic history have remained mobile at this level." Dr. Ashworth was frantically checking her own research files. Those 3 species were all from extremely high-gravity worlds, and they had specialized bone structures and muscle density. Humans should not possess such adaptations. Commander Vance activated her communication device and contacted her security team. "I need a full background check on human homeworld conditions immediately," she ordered. "Something is not adding up here." Jake noticed their increased activity and waved at them cheerfully. You know, if this is supposed to be some kind of stress test, you might want to add some obstacles or mental challenges, he suggested. Right now, it just feels like a basic fitness routine. Dr. Flores nearly dropped her tablet. He wants to make it more difficult, she said in shock. Increasing to 5 times standard gravity, she announced. The weight pressed down on Jake like he was wearing a full suit of medieval armor, but he adjusted his stance and continued moving. He had read about soldiers on Earth who trained while carrying over 100 pounds of gear. This felt similar to those stories. Dr. Chen was pulling up more data files with her 4 arms working frantically. I am finding references to something called a death world classification in our oldest records, she said. Worlds with extreme conditions that produce unusually hardy life forms. What kind of extreme conditions? Dr. Ashworth asked while watching. Jake do jumping jacks at 5 times gravity, high gravity radiation extremes, temperature variations, atmospheric pressure, dangerous predators, geological instability, Dr. Chen read from her files. The last Death World species we encountered was over 2,000 years ago. Commander Vance received a message on her communication device, and her crystalline skin flickered with surprise. My team just sent the preliminary data on Earth, she said. The gravity on the human homeworld is already considered high by our standards. What we call standard gravity is actually below Earth normal. Dr. Flores stopped her preparations to increase the gravity and stared at the commander. You mean he has been operating in reduced gravity this entire time? According to these readings, Earth gravity is 1.3 times what we consider standard, Commander Vance confirmed. The human has been performing these tests in conditions lighter than his normal environment. Jake called out to them again. Hey, I do not want to rush you, but is this test going to get more intense? I have a meeting with the Cultural Exchange Department in a couple hours, and I would like to grab lunch first. Dr. Ashworth felt dizzy and had to lean against the control panel for support. Her elven physiology struggled with even small gravity increases, and she could barely function at 1.5 times standard gravity. Watching Jake perform athletics at 5 times gravity was making her question everything she knew about biology. The human wants to know when the test will become challenging, she said weakly. Dr. Chen was reading through more files and her clicking sounds became rapid and excited. I found references to Earth in our exploration database, she announced. It is classified as unsuitable for colonization by 97% of known species due to hostile environmental conditions. What kind of hostile conditions? Dr. Flores asked. Extreme weather patterns, dangerous atmospheric electrical activity, seismic instability, aggressive biological life forms, and gravitational stress, Dr. Chen listed. Earth is marked as a world that would kill most galactic citizens within days of exposure. Commander Vance looked at Jake, who was now doing one-handed push-ups at 5 times gravity and whistling a cheerful tune. We are not testing a normal species, she realized. We are testing a survivor from one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. Dr. Ashworth made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. Increase to 6 times gravity, she ordered. Jake felt the extra weight and smiled with genuine pleasure. This was starting to feel like a proper challenge, similar to the advanced training programs he had heard about from Earth Special Forces. He switched to doing handstand push-ups against the chamber wall. The alien women watched in stunned silence, as their understanding of biological limits crumbled around them. Dr. Amy Chen pulled up a galactic map on the main display screen and highlighted several worlds in red. Her 4 arms moved quickly across the control interface as she cross-referenced data from thousands of planets. What she found made her compound, eyes widen with shock. According to our exploration records, 93% of death worlds in this galaxy have gravity equal to or less than Earth, she announced. The humans evolved on a planet that would be considered extremely dangerous by almost every known species. Jake was now performing handstands at 6 times gravity and seemed to be enjoying himself. He called out to the researchers cheerfully. This is starting to feel like a decent workout. On Earth, we have athletes who train in conditions much harder than this. Dr. Ashworth nearly fainted when she heard this. She had to sit down in a chair designed for her tall, elven frame. He says there are humans who train in worse conditions than 6 times gravity, she whispered. That cannot be possible, Dr. Flores protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Everything she thought she knew about biological limits was being proven wrong by the human in the chamber. Commander Vance was reading reports from her security team on her communication device. Her crystalline face flickered with different colors as she processed the information. "My team has been researching human activities and culture," she said grimly. "What they found is disturbing." "What do you mean disturbing?" Dr. Chen asked. While continuing her data analysis, "Humans deliberately seek out dangerous and extreme conditions for entertainment," Commander Vance explained. "They climb mountains so high that the air becomes too thin to breathe properly. They dive deep underwater, where the pressure would crush most species. They run across deserts and through frozen wastelands for fun." Jake heard part of their conversation through the chamber speakers and laughed. "Oh, you found out about extreme sports," he said while doing jumping jacks at 6 times gravity. "Yeah, humans love challenges. We have people who jump out of flying, aircraft for entertainment, and others who surf on giant waves that could kill you instantly." Dr. Flores increased the gravity to 7 times standard and watched in amazement as Jake barely seemed to notice the change. He started doing something he called burpees, which involved dropping to the ground, then jumping back up repeatedly. "The human population deliberately engages in life-threatening activities for pleasure," Dr. Ashworth said, in a voice filled with horror and fascination. "What kind of species evolves to seek out danger?" Dr. Chen found more data files and her clicking became rapid with excitement. "I am reading reports about human military training," she announced. "Their soldiers practice combat while carrying weights equal to half their body mass. They train in environments that simulate the worst possible conditions." "How bad could their training be?" Dr. Flores asked. "They practice fighting while deprived of sleep, food, and water," Dr. Chen read from her files. "They learn to operate in extreme heat and cold. They train underwater and at high altitudes where oxygen is limited. Some programs last for months in conditions that would hospitalize most galactic species within hours." Jake finished his burpees and started doing something called mountain climbers at 7 times gravity. His movements were still smooth and controlled. "You know, back on Earth I worked at a desk job," he called out. "I'm probably one of the more sedentary humans you could have chosen for this test." The alien women stared at him in collective horror. Commander Vance felt her crystalline structure flicker with alarm colors. "He claims to be one of the less physically capable humans," she said slowly. "Increase to 8 times gravity," Dr. Ashworth ordered. Her scientific curiosity was overriding her sense of caution. Jake felt the additional weight and adjusted his stance accordingly. This was definitely getting into the range where he needed to pay attention to his form and breathing. It reminded him of stories his friends in the military had told him about advanced training courses. "Starting to feel it now," he admitted. "This is probably similar to what our Special Forces guys train under. Pretty good workout, actually." Dr. Chen was scrolling through more files about Earth military units. "They're Special Forces," she read aloud. "Elite human soldiers who train in conditions that exceed normal human limits. They learn to fight while carrying equipment loads of 60 to 80 pounds in extreme environments." 80 pounds is 36 kilograms, Dr. Flores calculated. Quickly. "That is more than half the body weight of an average human, and they fight while carrying this load." Jake heard their conversation and nodded. "Yeah, the special ops guys are pretty tough. They do things like swim several miles in cold water while carrying full combat gear. Some of them train at high altitudes where the air is so thin that regular humans would pass out." Dr. Ashworth was taking notes frantically. "The humans have created specialized training programs that push their already extreme capabilities even further," she said. "They have artificially enhanced their natural advantages." Commander Vance was reading more reports from her team. "According to this data, human athletes regularly compete in events called ultramarathons, where they run continuously for over 100 miles, she said. "Some events last for multiple days with minimal rest." "That is impossible," Dr. Flores protested. "No biological being can maintain that level of activity." Jake was doing modified push-ups at 8 times gravity and overheard their conversation. "Oh, you found out about ultra running," he said with a grin. "Yeah, some of those guys are crazy tough. There is an event called the Badwater Ultra Marathon where people run 135 miles through Death Valley in summer when temperatures reach over 120 degrees. Dr. Chen stopped her data entry and stared at him. "Death Valley," she repeated. They named a location Death Valley and humans choose to run through it in extreme heat. Well, it is not actually that dangerous if you prepare properly, Jake explained, while continuing his exercises. Humans are really good at temperature regulation and endurance. We sweat to cool down, and our cardiovascular systems are designed for sustained activity. Dr. Ashworth realized that they were not just testing a resilient species. They were testing a species that had evolved to thrive in conditions that would kill most life forms in the galaxy. Earth had not just produced survivors, but had created beings who actively sought out and conquered the most extreme challenges possible. "Increase to 9 times gravity," she ordered, with a mixture of scientific fascination and growing respect for the species they had so badly underestimated. At 9 times gravity, Jake finally started to show signs of real effort. His breathing became more controlled and deliberate, and he had to focus more carefully on his movements. He switched from doing push-ups to simpler exercises, but he was still moving with purpose and control. "Now this is starting to feel like a proper challenge," he said with satisfaction. "It reminds me of the stories my cousin used to tell about Navy SEAL training. Those guys do some pretty intense stuff." Dr. Chen immediately began searching for information about Navy SEALs. What she found made her clicking sounds become rapid and alarmed. "Navy SEALs are an elite human military unit," she reported. "Their training includes something called Hell Week, where candidates must complete physical tasks while being deprived of sleep for 5 days straight." 5 days without sleep while doing physical training, Dr. Ashworth repeated in disbelief. That would cause permanent mental damage to most species. Commander Vance was reviewing more security reports about human military capabilities. "According to these files, human special forces can operate for weeks in hostile territory with minimal supplies," she said. "They are trained to survive in any environment on their planet, including frozen wastelands, burning deserts, and dense jungles filled with dangerous predators." Jake heard their conversation and nodded approvingly. "Special Forces guys are definitely tough, but honestly, most humans can handle pretty extreme situations if they need to," he said, while doing careful squats at 9 times gravity. "We are built for survival in harsh conditions." Dr. Flores was monitoring Jake's vital signs through sensors in the chamber. "His heart rate and breathing are elevated but still within safe ranges," she reported. "At 9 times gravity, most species would be experiencing cardiac stress or respiratory failure." "What is his current condition compared to baseline?" Dr. Ashworth asked. "He appears to be in a state similar to moderate physical exercise," Dr. Flores replied with amazement. "Like he was jogging or doing light calisthenics under normal gravity." Jake finished his squats and looked around the chamber thoughtfully. "You know this is getting pretty good, but it is still just a gravity test," he said. "Would it be possible to add some mental challenges or problem-solving tasks? Human military training usually combines physical stress with cognitive demands." The alien women looked at each other with expressions of growing alarm. Dr. Chen accessed her database of cognitive testing protocols. "We could add mathematical problems or pattern recognition tasks," she suggested hesitantly. "That sounds great," Jake replied enthusiastically. "Mental challenges under physical stress is good training for real-world situations." Dr. Ashworth activated the chamber cognitive testing system. A holographic display appeared showing complex mathematical equations that Jake would need to solve while maintaining his physical activity under 9 times gravity. "Please solve these equations while continuing your exercises," she instructed. Jake looked at the first equation and started working through it in his head while doing modified lunges. The math was challenging, but not impossible. Within 2 minutes, he had solved the first problem correctly. "Got it," he announced. "The answer is 4,732. What is the next one?" Dr. Chen verified his answer, and her compound eyes widened. "Correct," she said in amazement. "He solved a complex multivariable equation while performing physical exercise at 9 times gravity." Commander Vance was reading more reports about human cognitive abilities under stress. "According to this data, human pilots and soldiers are trained to make critical decisions while experiencing extreme physical forces during combat maneuvers," she said. "They regularly operate complex machinery while under gravitational stress, exceeding normal biological limits." Jake solved the second equation while doing one-handed push-ups. "The answer is negative 215.7, he called out. "This is actually pretty fun. It reminds me of the multitasking exercises we did in diplomatic training." Dr. Flores increased the difficulty of the mathematical problems, while Jake continued solving them accurately. He is maintaining perfect cognitive function while under extreme physical stress, she reported. This should not be possible for any biological entity. Humans train for multitasking under pressure from an early age, Jake explained while working. On the third equation, students learn to take tests while sitting in uncomfortable positions for hours. Athletes study playbooks while doing physical conditioning. It is just normal human education and training. Dr. Ashworth was taking detailed notes about everything Jake said. They deliberately train their young to handle multiple stressors simultaneously, she wrote. This creates a species capable of maintaining cognitive function under conditions that would overwhelm most other life forms. Jake solved the third equation correctly and looked expectantly at the holographic display. Is that all the math problems? He asked. Maybe we could try some pattern recognition or logic puzzles next. Dr. Chen programmed a complex pattern recognition test into the system. The display showed a series of geometric shapes that changed according to hidden rules. Jake needed to identify the pattern and predict the next shapes in the sequence. This is interesting, Jake said while studying the patterns and continuing his exercises at 9 times gravity. It reminds me of the logic games my nephew plays on his computer. Kids these days are really good at this kind of visual problem solving. Within minutes, Jake had identified the correct pattern and predicted the next 3 shapes accurately. The alien women watched in stunned silence as he demonstrated capabilities that exceeded their understanding of biological possibilities. He claims that human children regularly engage in similar cognitive challenges for entertainment, Dr. Ashworth said weakly. Commander Vance made a decision that surprised everyone. Increase to 10 times gravity, she ordered. I need to know the absolute limits of human capability for my security assessment. Dr. Flores hesitated at the controls. Commander, 10 times gravity is approaching lethal levels for most species. Are you certain about this order? Do it, Commander Vance replied firmly. This human represents a potential military asset or threat that exceeds our current classifications. I need complete data. Jake heard their conversation and smiled. 10 times gravity sounds like a good challenge, he said. Just so you know, I am getting pretty tired at this point, so my performance might start to decline. The alien women realized that what Jake considered declining performance was still far beyond what they had thought was possible for any biological being. At 10 times gravity, Jake finally reached what he considered a serious workout level. His movements became more deliberate and controlled, but he was still functioning far better than any biological entity the alien women had ever observed. He switched to simpler exercises and focused on maintaining steady breathing patterns. Okay, now this is definitely challenging, he admitted while doing careful push-ups. This feels similar to what I imagine astronaut training must be like. Pretty intense but manageable if you pace yourself properly. Dr. Ashworth was frantically taking notes and cross-referencing Jake's performance with thousands of previous test results. He is maintaining cognitive and physical function at 10 times standard gravity, she wrote. This exceeds the capabilities of every known species in our database by factors we cannot calculate. Commander Vance was already composing reports to send to the Galactic Council. I am recommending immediate reclassification of humans as a Class A survival species, she announced. They represent capabilities that could revolutionize our approach to exploration and colonization of hostile worlds. Dr. Chen was compiling a comprehensive analysis of human biology and culture. Based on our observations, humans appear to be naturally adapted for survival in extreme environments, she reported. Their homeworld has functioned as a natural training ground that produced a species capable of thriving in conditions we classify as lethal. Jake solved another complex mathematical problem while maintaining his exercises at 10 times gravity. You know, this combination of physical and mental challenges is really good training, he said. On Earth, we have something called obstacle course races, where people climb walls, crawl through mud, carry heavy objects, and solve puzzles all at the same time. Dr. Flores was monitoring every aspect of Jake's vital signs and physical performance. His body is adapting to the extreme gravitational stress in real time, she observed. Human physiology appears to have built-in mechanisms for handling conditions far beyond their normal environment. What do you mean adapting? Dr. Ashworth asked. His cardiovascular system has adjusted to pump blood more efficiently under the increased gravity, Dr. Flores explained. His muscle recruitment patterns have optimized to maintain function with minimal energy expenditure. He is essentially rewriting his own biological programming to handle the stress. Jake heard their conversation and nodded. Humans are pretty good at adapting to new situations, he said. We have people living at high altitudes where the air is thin, people working in extreme heat and cold, and people diving to depths where the pressure would crush most things. We just adjust to whatever environment we find ourselves in. Commander Vance received an urgent message on her communication device. The Galactic Council wants immediate access to our test data, she announced. They are convening an emergency session to discuss the implications of human capabilities. Dr. Chen was pulling up historical records of galactic exploration. I am identifying dozens of worlds that were classified as too dangerous for colonization, she said excitedly. If humans can operate in these conditions, we could expand exploration into entire regions of space that have been considered inaccessible. Jake was approaching his actual limits at 10 times gravity, but was still problem-solving and communicating clearly. Hey, can I ask you something? He said to the researchers. What is the highest gravity level this machine can produce? I am getting pretty tired, but I am curious about the maximum capability. Dr. Flores checked her equipment specifications. The chamber can produce up to 20 times standard gravity, she replied. But that level is considered instantly fatal to all known biological life. 20 times, Jake repeated thoughtfully. That would be pretty extreme, probably beyond what most humans could handle safely, though I bet some of our extreme athletes might be able to manage it for short periods. The alien women stared at him in collective amazement. Dr. Ashworth spoke for all of them when she said, You are suggesting that some humans might survive at 20 times gravity. Maybe for a minute or two, Jake replied. There are always people who push the absolute limits of human capability. We have free divers who can hold their breath for over 20 minutes, and climbers who operate at altitudes where there is barely enough oxygen to stay conscious. Commander Vance made another decision. Reduce gravity back to normal levels, she ordered. This human has provided more than enough data for our analysis. As the gravity decreased, Jake stretched and moved more freely. Thanks. That was a great workout, he said cheerfully. Much more interesting than the standard fitness routine I do at home. Dr. Flores opened the chamber, and Jake stepped out looking slightly tired but otherwise completely healthy. The alien women gathered around him with expressions of awe and respect. Jake, Dr. Ashworth said formally, on behalf of the research station, I want to apologize for underestimating your species. We clearly had no understanding of human capabilities. Jake smiled and shook her hand again. No problem at all. It was actually really fun. Thanks for the challenge. Dr. Chen approached with her tablet full of data. Would you be willing to participate in additional studies? She asked. We would like to understand more about human biology and training methods. Sure, that sounds interesting, Jake replied, though I should mention that I am just a regular diplomat. If you really want to study human physical capabilities, you should probably invite some of our athletes or military personnel. They could show you things that would really impress you. Commander Vance sent her final report to the Galactic Council with a recommendation that humans be immediately recruited for high-risk exploration missions. Dr. Ashworth began planning joint research projects to study human adaptation techniques. Dr. Flores started designing new testing equipment based on what she had learned about biological limits. As Jake prepared to leave for his meeting with the Cultural Exchange Department, Dr. Chen handed him a data pad. These are videos of other species performing the same tests you just completed, she said. I thought you might find the comparison interesting. Jake watched a few seconds of the videos showing various aliens struggling and failing at gravity levels he had handled easily. Wow, he said with genuine surprise. I had no idea the test was that difficult for other species. I really was just treating it like a normal workout. The alien women watched him leave with a new understanding of what humans represented. They were not just another species to be cataloged and studied. They were survivors from one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy who had turned their harsh environment into an advantage. As the laboratory returned to normal activity, Dr. Ashworth sat down to write her preliminary report. She began with a simple statement that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. Humans are not just another biological species, she wrote. They are a force of nature that has learned to walk among the stars.